This is Benin, a nation of 15 million people sandwiched between Togo and Nigeria. In this film, I'll be exploring the sights and sounds of this fascinating country of ancient traditions and voodoo beliefs. Travel experiences don't get much better than this. We start in Cotonou, by far Benin's largest city, and the capital in all but name.
Welcome to Cotonou.
Nearly 1 in 5 Beninois live in the metropolitan area of Cotonou. It's the seat of government, has the largest port, a long sandy beach washed by the Atlantic, and also boasts the largest outdoor market in the whole of West Africa. But first, I'm visiting its most impressive statue. Standing 30 metres high and covered in bronze, this is the Dahomey Amazon. The Amazons were a legendary all-female military regiment who protected the Dahomey Kingdom from the late 17th century to the early 20th century, with the warrior's motto, win or die. It's thought that there were around 6,000 Dahomey Amazons. The last of them died in the 1940s, but their spirit, well, that lives on in monumental fashion. Cotonou often claims to be one of the greenest cities in West Africa, and its showcase street is the Boulevard de la Marina, where manicured gardens lead to luxury hotels and various embassies. It's one of Cotonou's wealthiest neighbourhoods. Take the boulevard east past the port and you'll experience one of the longest murals in the world. Each year, various national and international artists contribute to this dynamic work of art and celebration of Benin and Africa. The goal of the project is to create a narrative that reflects Benin's identity and culture of peaceful coexistence. It keeps growing, and at over 1 kilometre is now the longest urban art wall in the world. At the heart of the older city centre, you'll find a vestige of the nation's communist past. This is l'Étoile Rouge, the Red Star. Look, to be honest, there's not much red left these days. The Red Star was built in the 1970s, during Benin's long socialist period. The Marxist-Leninist era dissolved in 1990, leaving the star to fade and Benin to surge. Just arrived from Europe, you might find the traffic here in Cotonou a little overwhelming. But if you just arrived from Lagos down the road, then you'll find it a breeze. Along the banks of the channel linking the lagoon to the sea, you'll find the organised chaos of the Dantokpa market. In the local Fon language, Dantokpa means on the banks of the Dan lagoon. Dan being a snake deity in the local voodoo tradition. Le Grand Marché de Dantokpa, located here in 1963, and has grown in a haphazard fashion ever since. It's a multinational operation attracting buyers and sellers from Nigeria, Burkina Faso and Niger, amongst others. It covers over 20 hectares and is organised into different zones, but its days are numbered. My visit was in January 2026. Over the next few years, to solve issues of sanitation, security and fire safety, the government plans to move the market to new locations around the city. So, if you want to get the full sensory experience, you should visit soon. The pace of the market is frenetic, so let's down-regulate by driving north and crossing the lagoon. Just a short ride from the city, this is the embarkation point for Ganvié, the incredible floating town. Ganvié is often termed the Venice of Africa. It isn't, of course, but more importantly, neither should it be compared to the floating settlement of Makoko in Nigeria, an infamous slum located in Lagos Bay. Ganvié is actually older than the country in which it is located and continues to thrive using sustainable practices. Small-scale traditional fishing from dugout canoes remains the main occupation and source of revenue. The founding of Ganvié dates back to the 17th century and is linked to the forced migrations caused by the slave trade. During this period, many ethnic groups were forced to flee attacks. Here in Lake Nkoe, which is in fact a shallow lagoon, the people were protected by the water, because in the Voodoo religion, water is sacred and inhabited by the ancestors. By moving here, the villagers gained strong spiritual protection. Over the years, the small population grew and laid the foundations of a lakeside town on stilts. They have a cultural heritage that must be protected, despite a growing number of tourists. Northeast of Cotonou, you'll find Porto Novo. Named New Port by the Portuguese, Porto Novo has lost its importance to Cotonou, but still is officially the capital of Benin. Many Afro-Brazilians returned here after emancipation, giving the city a distinct flavour, one that is visible in the Afro-Brazilian architecture of the Grand Mosque that was inspired by the Baroque churches of Salvador da Bahia and completed in 1925. If you're curious as to what happens to an old colonial cathedral that sits for years and years in the equatorial sun without any kind of restoration, then this is the perfect example. It's quite surprising really that Porto Novo has managed to cling on to the status of capital of Benin, because compared to Cotonou, where all of the business, commerce, education and most of the government lies, well, this really is a backwater. But it's still the capital and they're proud of that here. North of Porto Novo, the large village of Cove sits on an important road junction and is also an important centre for Benin's Voodoo tradition. The Egungun dance remembers the ancestors and purifies the village. The Egungun represent the spirits of the deceased ancestors, returning to bless, warn or communicate with their descendants. It's a charged experience, and one that I cover in more detail in a separate film about Voodoo that you'll find on the channel. Drums are absolutely central to Voodoo ceremonies. So where do they come from? In this small village just outside Porto Novo, there is a family famous across Benin for one thing: the production of drums.
When you are playing the drum, it's like a vibration. Vibration? Yeah. You are sending to the people who are here and the place you are playing the drum. So this family is like the fourth generation who is doing the job. So then, before going to cut the tree, they have to go with the spiritual leader and ask the tree if it's agreed that they cut him to make the drum. If the tree say no, not cut. They are not going to cut the tree. So when they cut the tree, they tell you about it. Djembe. Okay. They want to make one like this, a djembe one. So this is one the way they start.
Further north still, the hills around the town of Dassa bristle with voodoo energy. The 41 hills of Dassa are all home to different entities and rituals, including the rock of the first fish. This south-central region is home to numerous tribes that continue to live a traditional life. Amongst them are the Holy, a subgroup of the Yoruba and one of the most traditional communities in Benin.
Bí on bá lọ lẹ́dọ̀ ilé ìwọ̀n kan wọ́n kéṣù bí on kó lẹ́dọ̀ ní kánà wọ́n kẹ́ ìtọ́mọ́ kéṣù ilé náà kọ́ mọ́ mú délé wọn lóhun bí on dáre náà lọ kátà mú délé wa léèlì kó máa jẹ́ bí àìtọ́ jẹ́ kó dáa fún ojú òwúra ní káńjọ rẹ̀ ojú náà má fọ́ kó lékè ojú òwúra ní ìdí náà kò ní mọ́dé kó lékè ní ríjọ́ ilẹ̀ kéré mọ́ fúra ní sí tó wà ní kòṣì bí àìtọ́ jẹ́ kó dáa òun lé ọ̀nà kámbọ́ lẹ́dọ̀ wa bí yé àwọn àtàkùnfọ̀ àwọn límú ní àlọ́ nìyí ó ní kẹwọ́lì kọ́kọ́ dì í.
Not far away, there are Fulani herdsmen living a semi-nomadic existence. The children are not schooled here in the modern way. Instead, they learn how to farm and thereby feed the subsistence community. But traditional villages like this are diminishing as most Fulani decide to find employment elsewhere. Until 1975, the nation of Benin was called Dahomey, after the ancient kingdom of Dahomey, which had its capital here in Abomey. There is still a king in Abomey, though these days he lacks the power of those that built these palaces and are buried in the grounds. This was also the base of the legendary Dahomey Amazons. Outside Abomey, you'll find one of Benin's most unusual buildings. This is the Chameleon Church. Never fully completed, it's a Catholic church that blends with the local Voodoo tradition. A place of worship quite unique to Benin. If you're seeking a few days of peace in southwest Benin, then Lake Abomey is the spot. The second largest lake in the country provides rich pickings for the local fishermen. And as I mentioned before, water is spiritual in Voodoo beliefs, so it's no surprise to learn that the local villages hold frequent ceremonies to call on the ancestors and the deities. In the village of Bopa, the Temple of the Skulls is a shrine dedicated to Shango, the Yoruba god of thunder and justice. Voodoo is of course practiced everywhere in Benin, but the capital, well, that is Ouidah, Voodoo Central. There are very few places in the world where a Catholic basilica overlooks a voodoo python temple, except here in Ouidah. Now, voodoo beliefs have intermingled with Christianity ever since the first missionaries arrived, and in Ouidah that proximity is very obvious. According to local legend, the king of Ouidah took refuge in a forest during a war in the 1700s. In hiding, the pythons emerged from the forest and prevented him from being captured. Although it's been integral to life in Ouidah for many years, it appears that the character and authenticity of the temple is perhaps being lost in a substantial rebuild to cater mainly for tourists. A site that remains more natural is the sacred forest. According to folklore, this is where King Kapase, a 16th century ruler of the Kingdom of Ouidah, transformed into an iroko tree. This was the slave market. These days it's gone from being a place of sorrow to a place for partying. Away from voodoo, Ouidah is known for the route des esclaves, the slave route, a 4-kilometre trail of misery from Chacha Square to the Atlantic, along which enslaved people from various inland tribes and kingdoms were led to the slave ships. In a concession, the king of Dahomey, who did business with the European slavers, allowed them to circumambulate the tree of return. In theory, this would allow their souls to return to Africa. Many, however, did not allow their souls to leave, hurling themselves into the sea and drowning rather than boarding the ships. At the end of the slave route, by the beach, is the gate of no return. By the time the slaves reached here, they had been branded and tortured for weeks. Their spirit broken, and in theory, docile and ready to be transported to the Americas. These days, there are more positive stories that lead from this coast. The Turtle Sanctuary at Grand Popo carries out invaluable work treating injured turtles and educating local fishermen as to the importance of these marine reptiles to the ecology of the waters. Just like these baby turtles, I'm now leaving for new adventures. So that's all from me from Benin, a unique country that should be high on any traveller's list.